Hello and welcome to the Flourishing Introvert Talks with me, Jo Rawbone. This is the podcast that celebrates the natural gifts of introverts so that we can flourish in all situations. Episode 278, Recharging Without the Guilt. I saw a post recently that said, self-care is not self-indulgent. That really landed with me, and I'm pretty sure that it will have settled somewhere deep in your being too. After all, as introverts, we know only too well the heaviness and discomfort of knowing your mental, social and emotional batteries are running on little more than fumes. And yet taking time out to replenish without feeling like a failure, like somehow you're slacking off, which will inevitably disappoint someone, can become more and more difficult. We may feel like we have to push through, whilst at the same time serving up ourselves a dish of shame. I'm not enough, or I'm a bad person, with a side order of guilt. Escaping to be somewhere quiet is wrong. What's wrong with me? And that, dear listener, is how we disappoint ourselves and feed our inner critic. Well, it's time to ditch that way of thinking. So in this episode, I'm inviting you to shift your mindset in a sustainable way. Here's a couple of stark reminders to start with that will tee up your new mantra. Recharging isn't a luxury only to be enjoyed on high days and holidays. Recharging isn't escaping responsibility. We live in times that are trying to glorify hustle, and I'm having none of it. It's poppycock. Productivity doesn't improve when we flog ourselves 24/7. If we reluctantly comply with the pressure to keep up that pace non-stop, we'll soon burn out, and then we're good for nothing. Ready for a new mantra? Recharging is stepping into your power by honouring your unique needs. Try that on a few times and see how much better you feel. Recharging is stepping into your power by honouring your unique needs. It works well as an affirmation too. The purpose of an affirmation or mantra like this is to override the guilt that can prevent us from taking sufficient rest. Haunted by the fear of judgment we may face from ourselves and others, we snatch moments here and there rather than enjoying strategic replenishing. And I use that word deliberately for very good reason. There are three words we often use interchangeably, but they are different: resting, recharging, and replenishing. Resting often refers to a passive pause needed to reduce fatigue and stress. It helps us to conserve energy, but in my case doesn't give me any more energy. It's fairly superficial and a bit like closing apps that were draining my phone battery too quickly. Recharging is an enjoyable and active rather than passive restoration of energy, which often results in increased motivation and a greater capacity to engage. This is more functional and occurs when we take those precious walks in nature, engage in a hobby, or listen to our favourite music. Obviously, it's akin to putting your phone on charge before it is completely drained. Most of us know through trial and error what works for us on this level. But, and there's always a but, do we wait too long to recharge? Now, whilst recharging is what this episode is essentially about, there are times when we need to do more. So I'll also talk about replenishing. Replenishing is on another level altogether. This reflective and meaningful restoration of our inner reserves works on a foundational level, meaning it impacts much more deeply and happens when we take the time to nourish what has been depleted over time. When we replenish, we're restoring our inner capacity, resulting in better clarity and a more congruent way of being. This is what happens when we do things that enable us to switch off completely or use different parts of our brain, when we go on retreat, or when we fully engage in spiritual practices. Now, problems arise when we feel guilty about resting and taking time to pause, let alone recharging or replenishing. So why is that? In a word, or two, or three, it's the weight of people's expectations, including our own. We tell ourselves we ought to be able to keep up, keep going, keep everyone happy. So there's a bit of self-gaslighting going on, which, as we know, feeds our self-doubt. We fear others won't understand, forgetting that around 50% of any population identifies as an introvert. So lots of people will not only understand, they'll applaud your ability to manage your needs. And just because some choose to martyr themselves on the altar of the hustle culture, you are not obligated to follow. Remember your new mantra. Recharging is stepping into my power by honouring my unique needs. Ignoring this basic need negatively impacts our ability to function well. That's the definition of a need after all. Something which, unmet, means I don't function well. So as introverts, if we don't take time to actively recharge, we experience more brain fog, which means we don't think clearly or make our best decisions. It also means we're likely to be less tolerant of others and their unique needs. Biggest of all for me is that my ability to be fully present is severely reduced, and in my line of work, that's a complete no-no. If you're a manager or leader who's denying yourself recharge time, you're not serving your people well, and they deserve better. They deserve to feel psychologically safe around you so they can do their best work, not to feel like they're walking on eggshells when your stress and frustrations are showing inappropriately. So let's build on that mantra from earlier so we ground in reality the shift of mindset. In order to live from that mantra, you need to apply self-leadership, which starts with the narrative we tell ourselves. You can choose to be authentically assertive, so you stand up for your own rights and needs whilst respecting the rights and needs of others, or you can choose to be pessimistically passive and play the victim. I know which one I choose every time, and that's because victim attire doesn't suit me at all. But you do you. Recognise that you need rest, recharging and replenishing time. It's on a sort of sliding scale in terms of intensity and impact, but know that lots of rest will never compensate for a lack of replenishment. Schedule them all strategically and monitor what gets in your way. I'll come back to the phrase I started with, which is self-care is not self-indulgent. It's necessity for we introverts, and we need to know what really works for us in each of the three essential categories. For instance, a spa day sits somewhere between the rest and recharging categories for me, depending on what I need and who I'm with. I'm never fully recharged and certainly not deeply replenished by a day at the spa. So don't be afraid to do your own thing. It really doesn't matter if others get it or not. What I'm most interested in is how you plan to ensure that you take the downtime you need in order to be at your best. Ultimately, we're aiming to replace the guilt you might have felt about needing the space with real gratitude at being able to take the time you need and using it for long-term benefit. So here are a few ideas to stimulate your thinking and action planning. Number 1, pause regularly and treat pauses as a power move, not merely an escape. They conserve your energy, remember, so little and often can work well. Number 2, Schedule recharging time in accordance with your calendar and leave space for unscheduled recharging too. If you don't need it, you can always get to something else on your to-do list. This is the active restoration that tops up your batteries. Number 3, assert your right to recharge. It's part of your essential boundary management, so asking for what you need and using a conditional no more often is good practice. Number 4, start small and acknowledge the small wins. This is how we develop the gratitude habit that overwrites the guilt. After all, we're not doing wrong by taking the time we need to recharge. And finally, number 5, determine what you need to do to replenish, as that restores your inner capacity to flourish in all situations. I go on retreat 2 or 3 times a year, the latest one being over the summer solstice. And honestly, the older I get and the more effed up this world is, the more need I have to deeply replenish. My recharging isn't lasting as long as it used to, and the same may be true for you. The 5 things I've shared are all good options, and of course you may have your own ideas. The important thing is that you plan, schedule time for you, and block your calendar, because it won't happen otherwise. And if you feel some resistance and some beliefs holding you back, I strongly recommend you look to flip your limiting beliefs by taking the short, self-paced course of the same name. You'll find it on my website, flourishingintroverts.com, and the link to the information page will be in the description to this episode. The reality is you're not lazy, broken, or less capable because you need time out to recharge. In fact, you're wise and courageous for honouring your rhythm and choosing sustainable flourishing. It's not about shrinking or hiding, but showing up as your most brilliant, restored self. If you care as much as I do about showing up with presence, patience and passion, take the necessary time to enable your inherent qualities to flourish. By the way, I'm including a Recharge Without Guilt blueprint for you to have as a self-kindness companion to flourish without apology. Make sure you find the link in the show description. If you enjoyed this episode as much as I did, then please subscribe, rate us and leave a comment, because we know that helps other people find the podcast. And if other people find us, other introverts can flourish.
You are listening to an Intentional Media Production podcast.